Well, as you can see, Joe Biden's in, tearing into President Trump at that rally in Pittsburgh. Biden making his appeal to middle-class voters and unions. Other candidates trying to stand out from the crowded Democratic field, of which there are many. Here's one of them, 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Nice to see you in person.
It's great to see you as well.
Officially meeting for the first time. Biden did not really go after you or any of his Democratic challengers. What do you think of that?
Well, Joe Biden has an advantage of having sky-high name recognition. He's been in the public space for a long time. And so he's focused on Donald Trump. And I agree with the fact that we have to solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in 2016. And that's what Democrats should be focused on.
I wonder if you were insulted by the sleight of hand there, or the sleight of lack of acknowledgement in Pittsburgh, you and the others.
Not at all. I mean, he was a sitting vice president for 8 years. He's leading in the polls. If I were him, I would have done the exact same thing.
Okay.
So why the hell would Yang want the vice president to speak about him in his competing presidential campaign announcement, especially when, as Yang and that host were able to observe, no other candidate was mentioned. So why would Biden go after Yang, but then not anybody else? Now we've been over the fact that Yang's one of the few people who isn't, being a donor flunky like Harris or Gillibrand or Booker or any of that crowd. But it doesn't make it, like, the question's stupid because you want Yang to have such an ego that he would think, oh man, Biden better talk about me, or never mind the fact that he won't speak about the other 20 people in here.
Interesting. You want to do universal basic income, and to prove it, you want to give people in Iowa $1,000 a day.
Oh, it's $1,000 a month. I should
sorry.
I couldn't afford $1,000.
$12,000 a year, I should say. I correct myself. Well, are you pandering to the folks in Iowa to try and get that attention?
Well, we've already done this in New Hampshire, and what's fun about this is that when people actually get $1,000 a month, you see they do very positive, productive things. The family in New Hampshire is paying their daughter's college tuition bill. The same thing's going to happen in Iowa. So there are all of these abstract fears about people getting $1,000 a month, when in real life, if Americans got $1,000 a month,
what do you think that does? What changes for people if you do that? Well, because some would see it as just a simple handout, as you know.
There we go. Everybody's favorite word. Listen, you give the military, which we have done, $717 billion per year. Not seen as a handout at all. No one calls that a defense contractor giveaway. But if you talk about looking at your fellow American and saying, hey, we know your job has been paying you a stagnant wage for the last 40 years. Here's some extra stuff to compensate for these crap wages. You're giving them a handout. Never mind the fact that they work already. It's the same stupid argument with free school, where they try to argue, they think in their heads that there's something to gain by not being able to afford things. Like, I could never understand the conservative claim that free college was a handout when you still have to go to school, you still have to pass the classes, you still have to study, which should be the bread and butter of getting an education. Not wondering, oh, am I going to be able to pay for this ridiculously expensive book in class? But, just falls on deaf ears. So let's hear Yang's answer to this clown's question.
What's phenomenal is there's a lot of data on this. And what happens is that people's mental health improves, stress goes down, relationships improve, their physical health even improves over time, their trust in community members and their society goes up. So there are a lot of phenomenal effects, and we're already seeing this even on a very, very small scale with the family in New Hampshire that have been doing this for since January 1.
I'd be interested to see how people in Iowa respond to that. As you mentioned, New Hampshire there. How do you beat this administration when you're growing at 3.2%? That was the GDP number for the first quarter this year.
Well, GDP is like a highly flawed indicator of how we're doing. I mean, GDP is at a record high. Meanwhile, our life expectancy has declined for 3 straight years because of an increase in drug overdoses and suicides.
So Yang had a good response, but I wanted to kind of point this out. Every single time any person who runs against Trump introduces their own idea of an economic policy, these idiots will recite some number that is not determining of the overall status of the average American. So, for example, whether the GDP is 3% or 4 or 5 or 2 or 1 is not going to erase the fact that 76%, might even be 78. Yang had his own response that was slightly larger, of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And when you highlight the fact that it's only about 50+% that want Trump out of office, that means there are people who are so manipulated by the rhetoric of the current president of the United States that they have convinced themselves, hey, this crappy, terrible economic scenario I find myself in, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to get better. I'm just going to keep supporting Trump and things will get better, even though, again, if I don't get my paycheck, this next one, I'm screwed. He's helping me. He's doing such a good job. Like, that's the kind of mental manipulation that, Yang is screwed over by, along with all the other candidates running against Trump, because this cult has tricked themselves in thinking they're better off than they actually are. This hope for better thing. And that's part of the stupidity of the economy ramblings, because every time they mention that stuff, they're trying to see if they can coax Yang into conceding and admitting, oh, it's so great. And, I understand this and I believe that. And all of that is done to take to the Fox audience a fake idea of what's actually going on and get that, and with the hope that they continue to believe the lies and the scams of the last 2 years.
So if you ask the average American which you care more about, your neighbor's life expectancy or this phantom GDP number, and Donald Trump made the same case when he was running for office.
I don't know if you can make the case that it's phantom. I mean, it moves markets quite literally. Another question here. You support the Green New Deal, correct? You support Medicare for all. There's a hearing on that today in the House we're waiting for. You support a carbon tax. You support free or drastically reduced tuition at community colleges. Who would you, and we got a big list of all the candidates so far, who do you believe is the most liberal or the most progressive in this field today?
It's a fun question. I mean, it's a big field. It's like, for me, the liberal and conservative, it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. We have to start solving the problems of the American people. And we have to know that one of the main things, or several of the main things that are driving Americans to record levels of stress are our sky-high education costs and our sky-high healthcare costs. It's a leading cause of bankruptcy. So we have to come together. And the congressperson who was just talking about it, he said correctly that the costs in our healthcare system are out of control and we need to bring them down.
I didn't get a name from you, by the way, on that question.
You noticed that, huh?
Andrew Yang, it's $1,000 a month, okay?
It is that.
Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you.
All right, so you might ask yourself, what was so smearful about the interview? The beginning, and well, technically, all the questions had some kind of little tinge to them, but primarily the beginning and the end. In the beginning, they want to try to see if they can get Yang to show some huge ego that he doesn't have by going, "Hey, Biden didn't mention you in his stupid speech, so you're supposed to be upset, right? Because you're a big threat to his campaign, right?" And then Yang has to point out nobody else got mentioned. Why would I be upset? The second smear is toward the end. Oh, who do you think is the most progressive / liberal person? Look, any way he answers that, it's going to be a headline. If he comes out today and says Sanders is the most progressive besides me, which is probably true, they'll go on these different news sites, including FoxNews.com, and go, Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang's label fellow presidential candidate Bernie Sanders is the most progressive besides him. And they'll take it and try to make another story out of it and stoke in an attempt to further the ideological divide in the Democratic Party. So we also had some smears in the middle where it's like, oh, isn't it just a handout to give people free money? I mean, it's not like they're going to work while getting the government money. Isn't it a smear to give people a handout, even if they're going and getting employed and actively trying to do stuff as well? Isn't that all free and, not actually teaching them the hard work as we continue to lick the sack of a guy who became a billionaire because of his debt, because he was sperm. Like, I still can't get over that. Like, they will sit here, and we're about to close this out, but they will sit here and smear the hell out of regular people and their lack of wanting to work hard, which is why they're poor. And, this is their rationale, while completely ignoring the fact that the guy they've been bootlicking for for the last 2 years on this network is only rich because his father, like his only thing he did in terms of hard work was being his dad's sperm. So more stupidity from Fox and brilliance from Yang.